Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Small Business Chronicles, your Swiss Army knife in the business podcast space. We talk about all kinds of topics, but this is one that we haven't really touched on. So I'm really excited about our guest today. And as you guys know, I'm the co-host of the show and a serial entrepreneur myself. So we are going to talk about curiosity today. And so I'm really excited about getting into what that means for teams, whether you're a small or mid-sized team. And so I'm going to have a phenomenal conversation with our guest today, Julie Pham, and she's the CEO of CuriosityBased. She has a mighty team of four and a wealth of background in multiple different industries. And she even has a really unique story in the way that she grew up and kind of grew up around business. So we'll jump right in. Julie, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you doing, Brian?
I'm good. I'm good. It's I appreciate that question because a lot of times we jump right into it. Not everybody asks me, but yes, I'm fantastic today. I'm feeling curious about our
Mhm.
conversation. And I honestly, not every guest that I have has a TED Talk, right? And so I actually got to watch your TED Talk and really get to know you well and kind of your philosophy. So I think we're going to have a great conversation for sure. So tell us a little bit about you, though, because I get to do my research and our listeners don't. So um, uh, what really brought you to this point of curiosity in starting your company?
So I got to tell you that I wasn't always very curious.
Okay.
I'm going to start with that. I'm going to start with that. So it's just my own personal learning and lessons because even though I'm trained as a historian, I'm trained as an academic, that's very much about learn something so that you can write about it. And what
Mm,
I've learned is curiosity is actually about relationship building. It's about connection with other people. And I got that big lesson, Brian, when I started working in my family's Vietnamese language newspaper. My parents started the first privately owned Vietnamese newspaper in the Pacific Northwest, and I came back in 2008 during the Great Recession to help run it for 3 years. And I had to get my what I call my real life MBA, and I had to
yeah.
learn how to do all these. I had to learn how to sell. I had to learn how to market, how to do operations, and I did that largely by not just working in the newspaper, but also by volunteering. Because in a community newspaper, it's very important to be involved in the community. And so I realized how one directional my curiosity was, and how for me to truly have curiosity, I had to be learning from people and letting them learn from me and setting aside that time for that relationship building. And that was a hard lesson when I first came back.
Well, and that really spoke to me when I watched some of your content because you talk about it being a two-way thing, right? And you talk about that gap between, first of
Our
all,
expectations and
yeah,
what we actually
expectation.
get.
Yes, yeah. You could obviously say it better than me, but yeah, that was so true because I and maybe it's an ego thing. I oftentimes am in that position where I'm like, oh yeah, this person can learn something from me, but I'm not always open and curious to learning from the other person, And so when you really talked about that, the light bulb went off, and so I was really excited to dig into that more. And I know that our listeners will get a lot of value in learning how to be more curious and build relationships.
Mhm, mhm. And we actually think of curiosity as a practice. And so the a lot of ways people talk about curiosity, it's as a personality trait. It's something that you have or you don't have. And we actually think of it as everyone is curious. We're all born curious. It's just sometimes we don't always practice curiosity. And that is a way to help not take it for granted
Mm,
and to help
yeah.
appreciate that it can be difficult. And if it's difficult for other people, because Brian has sometimes like they need to be more curious, other people need to be more curious. It's like, well, maybe that means sometimes I need to practice curiosity too, and just helping people, teams admit when we're not
Mm.
admit, and that's like admitting a mistake, right, or admitting a blind spot. So that's how we think of curiosity. It's something that we always have to work at, and also acknowledging, yeah, right now I don't want to practice curiosity.
It's that's tough. It's not
Mhm,
fun, and but that's what you guys do. You've had a lot of success. You've got a small team,
mhm.
right? And you focus on helping leaders transform the workplace and deal through a lot of challenges that are really real and present, and all through that process of having a practice. of curiosity,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So,
And actually, Brian, maybe I'll just also add a little bit of how I got to this particular.
yeah, no, that'd be great. Yeah, give us a little bit of context.
Okay. So actually, because the approach is actually very much informed by community building. I mentioned earlier how when I first came back and started working at the newspaper, that volunteering, and then later on, ended up I actually had a wonderful job. I know a lot of people start businesses because they hate their jobs. I actually loved the job that I was in. I was an executive at a nonprofit for 6 years, and yet what I realized was curiosity can really connect people and help them collaborate and help them create. And I didn't want to just do it the for the organization I was at. I
Mm,
felt, wow, if I can get people who are volunteering to do this, imagine what we could do with people who are paid to work together. And so
yeah.
that's when I decided to start my own company, because I also wanted to I want to own my work. And so I just say that, as I know sometimes people feel like they're leaving something, and I felt called to create something.
I love that, right? Because you're exactly right. A lot of people start on their entrepreneurial journey for different reasons, and sometimes it's because they're dissatisfied in some way. But that's not the path for everybody. You know, if you're good at something, then I personally believe that you have an obligation to be in business and be good at business so that you can share that with as many people as possible and have a larger impact.
Mhm.
So, so tell me about your team. So, you know, you got a small team,
Yes.
very diverse. You know, how does your work show up at work? You know, because you do this for other people, but you have to also have this practice internally.
Absolutely. So I will I will say that I was an employer from the get-go. So I had
Okay.
this responsibility of payroll, of W-2 payroll from the get-go, because when I was leaving my org, I realized that I had some interns there and they would lose their positions if if I didn't bring them with me. And so
Mm,
from the get-go, and I was just we were going from a nonprofit to a for-profit. So I was like, okay, I gotta pay too. And so having that responsibility was something that has definitely informed just the culture of the business, because I also felt very responsible, because
mm,
like they're coming to build something with me. And so I actually started with social work practicums. Even though my background is in history, the three members of the team are actually all trained in social work.
mm.
And so we have this small and scrappy team and then they would start as practicum students, and then I would eventually convert them. And so over time, I ended up converting three people. And yes, we are really diverse. There's Vietnamese, Burmese, Spanish just spoken on this team of five. There's someone in her 20s, a couple of people in their 30s. I'm 45. We have someone in her 60s. So just in this team, it's we also, I think, that embodies the spirit of what we're trying to promote as well, because it's about different perspectives. It's about different approaches. I'm a big believer that there is no universal fixed truth.
Mm.
That it's actually, and that is, I think, kind of controversial now, right? Because people
Yeah.
want to know the right answer. What's the right thing to do? And we really promote there's actually no single truth, because as a historian, I know things change. The way we look at it, what's true at the time is going to change depending on who wins.
You're exactly right, Julie. I never thought about it historically, but you know, yeah, history is written by the winners, right? So truth does have some kind of subjective nature to it.
Mhm. Yes, and that's what we actually really help our clients see, that hey, this is about having a conversation. There is actually no right or wrong in this, and we are going to continue to have the conversation. In fact, success means that we are willing to engage in conversations with one another.
And you know, you guys have had a lot of success, right? So, and I want to talk about scale. So, um, how long have you had Curiosity Based, and you know, your team of four, and give me a sense of what kind of you know, what kind of growth you've seen in that
Okay.
time.
So we started in January 2021 in the middle of the pandemic.
Lovely.
And I don't think honestly I would have started the company if not for the pandemic, because we do a lot of our work virtually, because what we do is
Mm,
we help people, teams practice curiosity in the world, and a lot of that is through team building, retreat facilitation, and we can do a lot of that virtually.
got it.
Before it was seen as you have to do that work strictly in person. And so in the beginning, it was a couple of interns who then converted. The first one converted 6 months in, and then she became my first full time employee. And then, um, and that the first year we actually had a little small profit. And I think part of that was because of managing costs, because they were still in school. And then the
Mhm.
second year, they all graduated by then, and so I had to up the salaries went up, and that was actually, we saw a dip, and
Mm.
that second year was a loss. And then the third year was so much better, and that was we actually just finished our highest year. Now we are entering our fourth year.
Fantastic. And
Mhm.
what kind of size teams do you typically work with? Like, what's your ideal target?
Ye- Yeah, so actually, we really like working with government clients. That's
Really?
actually, yes. so
I
so in
imagine
that
there's a lot of need for some team interaction in that kind of place.
so
Yeah.
so yes, so that's actually when we do the direct work. So when we're directly facilitating that, we actually work with a lot of government clients, and also with nonprofits and businesses that value relationship building. So
Mhm.
even though I actually spent 9 years working in the tech industry, and so a lot of people think, oh, your connections in the tech industry. It's just like the tech industry is actually very transactional, though. And
Mhm.
so, we work actually a lot with real estate and finance, industries that understand and appreciate relationship building. And so
Well,
you asked me about size, and so government, that's quite big, right?
yeah,
That,
yeah.
and then it can be anywhere from orgs that are 7 people to, I think our sweet spot is actually about 10 to 50 people.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. And I want to talk a little bit about relationships within teams too, because
Mhm.
we kind of talked about this a little bit before we started the show. But um, right now is a really interesting time in terms of the employer-employee relationship, right? There's a lot of noise out there, some of it good information, some of it bad information, probably different truths, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
About what the mindset is of people within the workplace, whether or not they're going to resign, or the quiet quitting, or there's a lot of that talk around there, and this is something that you guys uniquely target, right? So, how have you experienced that in your own team,
Mhm.
or seen it in some of the teams that you work with?
So I've got to say that, just going back to my family a little bit, my parents taught me courage. They taught me how to
Mm,
take risks, because they were the hustlers among hustlers. They did not teach me systems. They did
okay.
not teach me how to be organized, right? And they were working with people. I mean, my father had hired the people who he had been in re-education camp with in South Vietnam. And so these are longtime friends, right? And so that
Mhm.
whole relationship felt different. Now here I'm in my own company, and how do I manage that? And in a very more of a high profit margin service oriented, uh, and a lot of that is encouraging this a place where people can learn. So I really think it's important for employers to think of their workplace as as learning, spaces for learning, because we don't stop learning after we graduate, after we
Nope.
leave school. And in fact, we spend most of our time in the workplace. And so I think one way to really help retain people and attract people is creating a environment where people feel safe, that they can be learning. So even though I've got 3 social work students, none of them do social work, right? They actually came, they want to work with me because they're like, I don't want to do social work. One is super technical, one is another facilitator, and one does marketing. She's like, I really actually want to do marketing. I'm like, okay, let's have you do that. And so I think it's important to hire, and then hire for what I call learn it alls.
Learn it all. I love
Learn
that.
it alls, right? And because some people are they're the know it alls. I think of it as learn it alls. And that means giving them the space to and the ability to fail too. Just and because I'm always asking, hey, as we're trying a new campaign, what are we going to learn? Not just what are we going to achieve? Even if that we don't get the outcomes that we wanted, what do we think that we can learn from doing this, and how do we optimize for learning as we try something? So I think that especially for small businesses, we can't always hire for those know-it-alls, right? For those people who are absolute experienced senior leaders in that. And so what I hire for is people who are willing to learn those skills. One person, my first full-time hire, she is now doing video editing. Like she taught herself that. She taught herself how to create digital courses. And so yesterday she was leading a conversation on cybersecurity recommendations. So I think
and coming from social work.
Yes, exactly. And coming from social work. So I think in this environment, people, when we talk about the Great Resignation, when we talk about burnout at work, that's because people feel that their expertise and their labor is being extracted. And it's just, oh, I'm here just to provide value for the company and for the clients, and I'm not receiving anything. And so for me to be able to also, I mean, this is also because we're a startup, so I can't pay the salaries I know that people are worth. And yet what I'm constantly doing is investing in their learning. Okay, what courses do you want to take? What organizations do you want to take? Because while you are here, let's have the best learning experience together, because I'm learning too.
Yeah.
I'm learning.
Well, and you're making that education part of the benefits package, right?
Yeah. And
that's
modeling that.
It's huge.
Yeah. And Brian, I also got to tell you, like, some of those early mistakes that I made, one of the things that definitely have changed from year 1 to year 3 is feeling a lot more comfortable around transparency around finances.
I could have a whole episode's worth of conversation on that right there, because you hit it right there, Julie. I think that so many owners are afraid to be open book. The best decision I ever made when I was running my real estate team was shifting to open book, because I all of a sudden saw that people had an ownership mindset and they understood the cost of decisions and the cost of investments that don't go correct and the cost of their time, so that's huge.
Yeah. And feeling that they also have an opportunity to help with that revenue generation as well. I mean, just starting at the beginning of this year, I was able to say, hey, in this time of layoffs, we see so much fear around, am I going to be able to keep my job? And so at the beginning of this year, I was able to show the finances to the team and say, hey, this is what we need to do to stay flat. This is what we need to do to stay at the exact same level, at the exact same salaries, which also can feel in this time of inflation, feel like less, right? It's just like, this is what we need to make. And I can personally guarantee no one's getting laid off. This is what we need to do how much revenue we need to bring in to be able to convert people. And we've also had honest conversations about who wants to be converted first to full-time. And so even being able to talk about that gives people that peace of mind, that I think that if we can be more open about it, and then they feel so much more invested. And Brian, that was never modeled for me.
No,
my parents
I've never
didn't do
had
that.
that.
I've never been an employer. Here's the P&L. Any questions? They flash it for 5 seconds. Okay, no questions. And and it's so high level. And for me to go in and say, this is how much money I make. this is where all the expenses go. This is how cash is flowing in. It's actually been, and you know what's really powerful as a small business owner? I don't have to think of the different stories I'm going to tell different people. It's like, this is the story.
Yeah.
This is the story. And they ask great questions.
If you tell the truth,
Yeah.
If you just tell the truth, you don't have to remember anything.
Yeah. Right?
You just, the conversations are easy. And, look, you're speaking my language, Julie, too. I mean, you're talking to someone that my entry into real estate and owning my own business was coming off of being in a Fortune 5 company. And over the last 4 years of the 8 that I was there, I went through 3 rounds of layoffs. And the anxiety that creates, not knowing if we're positive or negative, not knowing if there is some kind of shift around the corner. That absolutely impacts productivity, customer service, your ability to do your job. I mean, all of those things are impacted.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, and I mean, I've been through multiple layoffs when I was working in the tech industry too, so I know that fear. And I also want to be really clear. It took me years to get to this point. I remember the first time when I was just that second year, I was like, and I looked at my P&L, I'm like, oh, we are I'm making payroll because I'm putting in cash infusions, and should I share this? And that's when I decided I will share this. But it took me a few
Mhm.
days to think about it. And so it's definitely been a process because it was never modeled for me.
Well, and I think that one observation I have in this conversation, Julie, is there's a study I saw that people change careers on average every 8 years, right? And so I bring that up to say that what you're talking about, having that transparency around the budgeting and the finance and the P&L, and also creating a space where people can educate and skill up, that allows that outlet so that career change, so to speak, can be within your organization instead of outside of it, right? Because people have a natural want to grow and change, and instead of feeling like they're just being, extracted, their skills are
Yes.
extracted. I love the way that you put that.
Yes. And an exercise that we do, so we eat our own medicine, right? We take our own medicine. And
Love it.
so one of the exercises that we do that we guide teams through is, what does success look like and what does it feel like?
Mm.
What does it look like and what does it feel like? What is it for me individually and then also for the team? And so looks like means tangible, measurable, or an event. Feels like is that intangible. And both are important. They need to be aligned. And I think that's the thing. We can hit all of our financial goals and feel crappy. And
Yeah.
and right. And so it's constantly about monitoring that. So every year we do that for ourselves. We do that. What does it look like what does that mean for me individually on this team? And what does it look like for the team and for the org? And something else that we do, we just actually finished it, is we do an energy audit. And that is, each person will go through, say, these are the things, these are my responsibilities, my task here that give me energy, that take away energy, that are kind of just neutral, and that I want to explore because I think it will give me more energy. And then we do a big consolidation of that and we try to move it around. I mean, and now we're on our third year of doing it, and we decided, hey, let's do this in 6 months because our work keeps changing. And what it's led to, though, is things that I think that I hate. Like, I hate internet research. And when I put that out there, I hate internet research. It takes away so much energy. Other people like it. But I think, oh, I don't want to burden anyone else with this because it's dreadful. But then I find out, oh, there are actually people on this team who like it. And so they can take that on. So it also kind of blurs the roles and responsibilities, that job description, because we can have a little more flexibility with that, and we can align it with, well, what are the parts that of the work that give people energy and that take away energy, and how do we redistribute that so that we're trying to optimize for energy giving work instead of energy draining work.
I love that. We went through something similar on our internal team, and I'm sure it wasn't as detailed as what you take your clients through. We just recently read the Six Working Geniuses
Mhm. Oh, I love that. Yeah, I love
from
that.
Patrick
Mhm.
Lencioni, and
Mhm.
and because that's a lot of what he's talking about. I
Mhm.
mean, he puts a model around it, but essentially, it is you're figuring out, okay, what activities drain me, and what actually gives me energy. For me, um, I don't like email. But because email will drain me, it doesn't matter what the email is or what I'm responding to. However, I could have phone conversations or voice to voice conversations for 8 hours straight and be totally fine. And I have
Mhm.
team members that are the exact opposite.
Mhm.
And great, let's all play where we want to play, right?
Mhm.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yes. Yeah, I really like that framework. And the framework that we actually developed at CuriosityBased is called Seven Forms of Respect. And so that's actually around how we agree how respect feels, feeling seen, heard, acknowledged. We disagree about what it looks like. And so if you think about the five love languages, right? It's
Yeah.
more of like that they're the ones that we prioritize and the ones that we don't prioritize. And we think of this as complementary to a lot of those personality communication assessments like Myers-Briggs or DISC, which is very much
Yep.
about this is me as an individual, and Brian, what are yours? And how do I know that you're this and this and I'm a this and this? We actually, in some forms of respect, it's just, yeah, we're going to individually prioritize them. Yeah, on this team, we have to think about three, what are our top three that we prioritize. And that means that even if I don't like it individually, I will do it for the team.
Because it's
So
important. Yeah.
actually, in my personal life, I don't have as much information. But as a team, I realize how important it is. Information is that transparency, is that giving open access to information. And yet, as a team, that's what's important. So I will give that for the team. So, and sometimes it's oftentimes with the leaders, they want to go with their personal preferences and they say, this is what we should do. And we try to shift that conversation, say, no, what, considering the nature of the work, considering our mission here, what forms of respect support that work? And that's what we should do, not people's personal preferences.
Well, because there is a difference, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about what I like and my personality. That's why a lot of those assessments are great and they're insightful. What they show you is revealing, but it's not necessarily actionable, right?
Yeah. And it is, I mean, we think of that. I mentioned curiosity as a practice, and we think of that as having these three elements. The first is self awareness, the second is relationship building, and the third is clear communication. So, what those assessments are really good for is self awareness.
Yeah.
And, one of my favorite stats is most people think that they're self aware, yet only 10 to 15% of them actually are.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something we constantly have to work at. I think I have so many blind spots. I have so many blind spots myself. And I know that my team helps me see things that I don't see. And I think that's actually for any business owner to be able to actually model humility and to model practicing curiosity and to make it a safe place for us not to know. Another stat I like to cite is 70% of people face barriers asking questions at work. We talk a lot about psychological safety. I actually think an indicator of psychological safety is, do people feel safe admitting they don't know and asking each other questions? Because sometimes we're afraid of actually how the question will make someone else feel. And that's why we don't ask. And so even when we talk about feedback, because we do a lot of work around feedback and we give each other feedback, we do it with curiosity. This is just something I noticed. I'm not saying that it's right or wrong. Again, there's no right or wrong. It's just, this is what you're doing, how that makes me feel. And I want to understand why you do it, because then maybe I can accept, oh yeah, you just do that thing. And I'm going to need to accept that. And I understand you more now versus I gave you some feedback and now you need to change.
Well, and even the language that you use within that intent to come from curiosity is important, right? That's one thing that I've learned, because I do my best to practice curiosity. I'm by no means an expert, but a lot of times I found that why questions put up walls and what or how questions actually don't. I mean, that's so I talk to my team about that, because when we're in communications with clients or with each other, it's, what about that made you feel that way? Instead of saying, well, why did you feel that way? Because if you say, why did you feel that way? Then immediately they're like, well, what do you mean? I'm allowed to have my feelings. Right. And it just those little language changes, if you have it as a practice, you'll start to pick up on, and the impact is huge. Tiny change, totally different way that it's received.
Yes, I heard someone on a podcast say that why questions are about the past and what questions are about the future.
I like the way that
And
that was
and
put. Yeah.
and so as a historian, I actually like my why questions. And so and yeah, I also think it's actually having self-awareness around the kinds of questions we tend to ask, because that's something we also take people through, and we also reflect on ourselves. We have a particular inquiry orientation, and we might not even be aware of. For me, I'll ask why to understand, but actually I'm very much of a how person. I want to know how
Mhm.
we're going to do something and all the different approaches to that.
Well, yeah, because it's forward looking, right?
Mhm.
The past is important.
Mhm.
We take guidance from it, but
Mhm.
ultimately the future is what we're working towards, and the present is what matters, right?
Mhm.
So love it. Well, look, we've had a fantastic conversation, Julie. I really enjoyed it. We've talked about communication. We've talked about being open, coming from curiosity. We've talked about being learning based and making sure that you have a space in your organization for people to learn and change and grow so that they can feel fulfilled instead of extracted. What a phenomenal topic. And I know that we could probably talk another 30 minutes on this, but I also want to be respectful of your time. So if someone's listening and their curiosity is piqued and they really want to find out more and connect with you and see some of your work, what's the best way for them to get in contact with you?
So if you're on social media, I am very active on LinkedIn. I also have a LinkedIn newsletter. Also, please visit us at curiositybased.com. I have a weekly newsletter I'd love for you to sign up for. And actually, I talk a lot about these things on my YouTube channel as well. So we just
Awesome.
have lots of shorts, tips, snips.
All that digestible content. Love it.
Mhm.
Well, we will make sure that all your info is in the show notes, and I'll make sure I put the link to the TED Talk too, because I know I mentioned that earlier. So if you guys are listening and you want to find out more about Julie, then just check out the show notes. We'll make sure that you know how to get in contact with her. So, what a fantastic conversation! Again, I'm big on gratitude, and so I want to say I'm very grateful for your time today, Julie, and for your expertise. So,
Brian, I have
really
so
enjoyed the
enjoyed this
conversation.
conversation as well. Thank you so much for inviting me on. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, I have to do all the podcast stuff. So, you guys, you can either skip to the next episode now, or you can listen to the spiel that you've heard before. But make sure that you do all of this stuff in the podcast space that's necessary for us to continue giving these great conversations to you. Like us, subscribe, give us a rating. And if you enjoy this conversation, stay tuned for more, or check out our full network of shows at smallbusinessdeliver.com, where you can see other business related podcasts just like this one. And we are sponsored and produced by Titan Media Works. So I've got to throw that out there. I couldn't do what I do in the podcast space without having a full team of production behind me. We have audio editing, video editing. We help with booking services and placement. And all of those things are available to you if you have an interest in having a show yourself. So make sure you reach out to me if you're curious to find out more. So until next time, make sure you guys are out there keeping the entrepreneurial spirit alive. And remember that no matter how small your business is, you have a big story to tell. Tune in for another conversation in business next time. Thanks again.